Coming to you from a cozy little condo high atop Old Fourth Ward, Atlanta. Welcome to The Ron Show on America One Radio. Here's your host, Ron Roberts.
I actually planned on taking a vacation week this week because I am going to go camping Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. However, here we are on Monday morning, and Atlanta is in full-on crisis, water crisis. By now, I'm sure you've heard that the city of Atlanta has faced water main breaks and outages throughout most of downtown Atlanta and surrounding neighborhoods since Friday morning. We'll try and give you a little summation of how things went throughout the weekend and the ramifications of these outages, both fiscally, economically, hundreds of millions of dollars in economic impact, I have to believe by now, and the political impact as well. And yes, there are political impacts. Mayor Andre Dickens announcing his re-election plans in February. He's up for re-election in 2025. He was actually not in the city. No, I'm sorry. Let me take that back. He was in the city when the first main broke Friday morning and still boarded a plane to Memphis, Tennessee for a fundraiser being held by the mayor of Memphis on his behalf. That's right. Mayor Andre Dickens, knowing that there was a major water problem, boarded a Delta Airlines flight for Memphis before coming back because there was a fundraiser in his honor in Memphis. Friday, we had two water mains, a 48-inch line and a 36-inch line on Joseph E. Boone Boulevard Northwest, and that impacted facilities in downtown Atlanta, including Emory University Hospital, Grady Memorial, City Hall, Old Fourth Ward, downtown hotels, of course, Mercedes-Benz Stadium, State Farm Arena, where Megan Thee Stallion was set to perform this weekend and did not get to. Three other breaks reported almost immediately afterwards. Glenwood Avenue southeast. We had Berkeley Avenue northwest, Beechwood Drive northwest. We had new breaks reported Saturday at 775 Joseph E. Boone Boulevard and West Peachtree Street and 11th Street. And we've still got gushing water coming out in Midtown, by the way, and a planned outage to address those repairs for a large portion of Midtown Atlanta. I still don't have water where I am in Old Fourth Ward. I mean, maybe it's just because I'm on the 7th floor and it's not getting here yet, but it's kind of, we had it briefly a little bit yesterday. I was able to run around in my shower and get wet enough to clean myself. However, as of this morning, we do not have water in Old Fourth Ward. We also see the Atlanta Journal-Constitution reporting possible breaks at 1190 Atlantic Drive Northwest and Euclid and North Avenues Northeast. The city's water infrastructure is crumbling beneath us. As sporadic as the water situation has been as far as delivery goes, the information has also been sort of sputtering out of various City of Atlanta social media accounts. Atlanta Watershed having its own social media. And again, their delivery has been rather sputtery. The city sending us photos as soon as the mayor got back from Memphis of him talking to people while wearing hard hats, of course, because that's what politicians do. They show up at a crisis and put on a hard hat and make sure that there are photographers around. I know I'm feeling a little cynical here, or sounding a little cynical, but I am kind of cynical when we learn that the mayor got on a plane after the initial breaks so he could get to his fundraiser in Memphis, Tennessee before coming back. Anyway, someone who has actually given us a lot of information throughout the weekend has done a yeoman's job on this as things were devolving Friday and Saturday is journalist, columnist George Cheedy with the Atlanta Objective. George joining me. In fact, I appreciate you joining me because I know you and the wife are heading out of town to go spend a little time in Charleston for the next few days. But before you go, I wanted to let you chime in and get your thoughts, your perspective on how we got to where we are. We were literally seeing the city's water system crumble beneath us. Is this nefarious? Mm-hmm. Is this just neglect? A little bit of both? What's the story?
So it's a combination of a bunch of things. So the short answer in the short term is that there was a corruption problem over the last few administrations that is really starting to show up today. Some of what happened over the weekend was coincidence, but it's coincidence in the sense that lots and lots and lots of unfunded, like deferred maintenance, all started to hit all at once. And the question is why that wasn't being maintained.
Mm-hmm.
And the answer to that is complicated. Because it starts 50 years ago.
Yeah.
So let me back up. White flight
Yep.
started to decimate the tax base of Atlanta and a lot of big cities.
Sure.
Starting in the 70s. White people with money moved out. There was a limit to how much you could raise property taxes and water rates without driving away investment. And the answer to that, frankly, was to not do the necessary maintenance on the sewer and water systems.
Mm-hmm.
So here we are. We got an 80-year-old pipe, and I saw the pipe. I went down there, and it was clay with brick. It looked like somebody built a water pipe out of cobblestone as they were pulling it out.
Like Roman Empire, right?
Kind of. Felt like it. Looked a little bit like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's what's in the ground. That's what went in the ground when the Hemp Hill Water Station was built in 1950, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
The thing I'm trying to track down now is that the neighbors apparently said that this leak had been ongoing and had reported it in the days and weeks before it blew.
Mm.
And that nothing happened. That's a bigger issue.
Mm-hmm.
But in the very short term, the water commissioner is new, was appointed 3 weeks ago, new. And is still trying to, don't get me wrong, I generally have confidence in the guy, but, this is a hell of a way to start the job, 3 weeks in, with this stuff. And they communicated poorly.
Absolutely.
I think they were communicating poorly because they were new at it. So this water main break, is raising big questions about investment,
mm-hmm.
How the city has been investing and whether or not private investment is going to happen in the core of the city if they don't think that there's a water system they can rely on.
It's funny that you mentioned that because I half-jokingly tweeted that it's a shame that we don't have an Atlanta watershed foundation the way we have an Atlanta police foundation willing to throw gobs of money at a college campus for police officers to invest in our infrastructure, because clearly there has to be a public-private mix because the public hasn't been able to put the investment in the infrastructure needed to keep a city of this size functioning at a key moment.
You bet. There's the report I read said there was $8, maybe $9 billion in deferred maintenance that has to happen. And if it doesn't happen, we're going to keep getting major water breaks. So, some perspective. In 2022, there were 367 water mains that blew in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
Some of that had to do with a very cold. You remember that crazy cold snap a couple of years ago?
Yeah, Christmas.
That was 60 water mains blew while that was going on. Nonetheless, it happens all the time, and most of the time it's not some catastrophe. You lose water, a neighborhood loses water for 6 hours and then it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
It's expensive, it's irritating, but it gets fixed. The problem is it's almost never in the downtown area, and it's almost never two of them in the downtown area.
Mm.
And that's where all the questions need to go. So one part of this is the reason we have a new water commissioner is because Joanne Macrina, an appointee of Keisha Lance Bottoms, is a year into her 4.5-year federal prison sentence for corruption.
Mm-hmm.
Because she was steering contracts to favored people.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, Macrina might have been a Kasim Reed appointee. Let me double check that. However, like wide-ranging corruption probes. She is not the only person who was working at Watershed who went to jail. And as I was looking at some of the annual reports during her time administrating the thing, I'm seeing all of these, hey, we saved all of this money doing X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm beginning to look at that going like, well, how did you save that money? Did you save that money by not doing work? Because that's kind of what I'm looking at right now. This question about like, so I have an Open Records Act request right now asking for the department's internal assessment of fraud, waste, and mismanagement.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's one thing for me to go, oh yeah, okay, well, Macrina went to jail, like, and maybe that's what's causing it. Like, it's maybe they understand it and they're not talking about it because it makes the city look bad.
Right. We're with author and columnist George Cheedy from the Atlanta Objective. You can follow him at Neon Flag on the X Twitter platform. And of course, you can find much of his work at theatlantaobjective.com. So when we come back, what is the state's role in this? What is the governor saying? Where was Mayor Andre Dickens when this all went down? The answer may surprise you when we return on The Ron Show, the America One Radio app, AmericaOneRadio.com, on demand at ProgressiveVoices.com, or wherever you podcast. You can also follow The Ron Show, by the way, if you want to hit us up on social media, at Ron Show ATL on the Twitter X platform, Instagram, Facebook, Threads as well. I want to thank George Cheedy from the Atlanta Objective, theatlantaobjective.com. You can follow him on Twitter X at Neon Flag. Author, journalist for a long time in the city of Atlanta. He knows where the bones are buried. He also seems to apparently know where the water mains are. So anyway, I want to thank him for joining us to discuss the current water crisis the city is dealing with. A number of major and minor water main breaks Friday and Saturday, Sunday into this morning have caused outages throughout most of downtown Atlanta and adjacent neighborhoods. And it got me to thinking. Initially, my thought was, okay, one major break is concerning, two major breaks, and now I'm starting to think, is this some sort of nefarious, planned thing, a terror attack, something along those lines? But when you put it in perspective, obviously, as you mentioned, for more than half a century, we've been dealing with underfunding. You mentioned the $9 billion price tag, and we're living in a state with a $16 billion surplus. And I point this out all the time. In fact, my dad and I were talking about this because this is news, regionally now. It's not just an Atlanta news story. It's become a regional and national news story. I mentioned him. I said, well, part of the problem is we are a major city, a major destination. A lot of folks use our infrastructure and don't contribute very much to it. And the state being one of them, this is a top 10 metropolitan area and the largest in the country that has mass transit where the state doesn't contribute a dime. So where does the state come in on this? Is there any culpability with the state providing any resources whatsoever?
This goes to the fundamental political problem in the South. Is that conservative state governments are at war to some degree with their liberal cities.
Mm-hmm.
And this is an example of it. In a sane world, the state would step in. They've got a surplus. It's the largest city in the state. It is the economic engine for the state. And it would make sense to shift some funding.
All the sense in the world.
Establish a tax. The problem is, state leaders don't want to look like they're on record sending, the stupidity of this, sending money to Atlanta in order to solve those problems created by Democrats.
Yeah.
Which is nuts.
No, I know. I get it. Yeah.
And in part because, the city sends more money to the state than it gets.
Mm-hmm.
Straight up.
Mm-hmm.
I think there was a role. I think that, there's a state infrastructure role in, sort of for economic development purposes.
Mm-hmm. Well,
ensuring that Atlanta can, continue to grow. Because the problem here is this. It's not just, okay, we blew some water and people weren't able to go out to the restaurants, over the weekend, and Megan Thee Stallion's concerts didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the problem. The problem is like we've run out of room to build houses.
Mm-hmm.
And so downtown and midtown are looking tasty. Downtown in particular is looking tasty as a place to build new apartments,
Yep.
to build new condos,
Yep.
to increase density on top of MARTA station.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a reliable water system and you're adding demand to it, like, I mean, if I were an investor, like looking to build this stuff, I would be raising real questions.
Yeah, I'd be hesitant, right?
About what are my costs?
Mm-hmm.
Am I going to have to rebuild a main in the process of building an apartment? Is that main going to blow?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what am I doing about all of this? Like, even if you tax me for it, is it actually going to get fixed?
Mm-hmm.
That sort of thing. Yeah, like, that's a problem. It isn't just, the momentary disruption. It's it changes the way we appreciate risk in the city. And so I think the city needs to be really deliberate and really upfront and really serious about how they message about all of this right now.
I agree 1,000%. There has to be a little bit of a PR effort made here at some point in time. I was sitting here scanning through Governor Brian Kemp's social media. Not a word about this. But this is not an Atlanta and a Georgia problem. This was an Augusta and a Georgia problem in the 1990s. This was a Jackson, Mississippi problem just, in the last 2 years. This is obviously a problem that we see, repeating itself in similar and varying scales. But here we are in the 10th largest metropolitan area, and maybe that's big enough now to finally start having that larger conversation.
I would hope so. Like, I mean, there's a regional question here, like, because the rest of Metro Atlanta is depending on Atlanta in order to absorb all of the people that are coming.
Mm-hmm.
Atlanta permitted 15,000 units last year.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and the thing is, like, Atlanta's only about 520,000 people in the 5.2 million person metro area.
Yeah.
Like, Atlanta isn't just Atlanta. And the rest of metro Atlanta, frankly, isn't keeping their end up on development. They want the density in the city so that they can do the suburban thing, and push whatever problems they've got locally into the city.
Right.
And this is just one more evidence of it. Like, the cities, there are limits to how much the city can grow and develop and solve housing problems, because its infrastructure is sitting on 50 and 80 years of underinvestment and neglect.
1,000%. Well, I want to thank you so much for again traversing throughout the city on Friday and Saturday, getting more coverage actually or giving us more coverage of what was actually happening on the ground than a lot of our major media outlets were. You were all over the place. Hopefully, you're heading off to go get a little R&R and catch your breath a little bit.
I am off reporting.
You're off reporting. There you are. It's still working.
It's a reporting trip to North Charleston.
To North Charleston, it is. Is there a mayoral fundraiser in North Charleston that we don't know about? I'm kidding.
Not that I know about. Like, so yeah, that's the other thing.
Yeah.
Mayor Dickens was on a plane. He had a scheduled fundraiser in Memphis.
Yeah.
I don't know for whom. I've got some phone calls to return in order to get the answer to that.
And it's my understanding that the fundraiser was for him, being hosted by the mayor of Memphis.
That's weird as hell. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Like, why he would need to raise money in Memphis is a question mark.
Yeah.
I don't know what the hell. He doesn't need that money.
Yeah.
But what that is, is if he is raising money for himself in Memphis, then I would assume that's because he's trying to shove money. He must assume at this point that he's going to have a meaningful challenger in 2025. I still think he gets reelected, believe it or not.
Mm.
But he'll have a reasonable challenger in 2025, and he's worried about that. But I've always assumed that he has higher, broader political ambitions than just being mayor of Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
Nonetheless, he got on a plane because there's a schedule to do it. And I understand this, Like, you've got a new guy in charge in the department, and you don't want to Bigfoot it. Like, you don't want, like there's a leadership problem if you can't leave town and the guy that you've left in charge can't get the job done.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it would show a tremendous lack of confidence in his new appointee, and that turns into a big problem down the line. I don't think at 2:00 on Friday it was evident that this was going to be the problem that it was. However, he normally is communicating a lot about stuff like this, and he was radio silent until the next morning when it became really evident that half the city was pissed at him.
All right, so I'm up against a hard break. We are with George Cheedy, author, columnist at The Atlanta Objective. You can follow him on the Twitter X platform at Neon Flag. Very informative when things like, water main breaks come up. Find his work at theatlantaobjective.com. Back after this.
This is The Ron Show on America One Radio.
Author and journalist George Cheedy joining us to discuss the current Atlanta water crisis. You can find his work at Neon Flag on the Twitter X platform. TheAtlantaObjective.com is where all of his resources are. He has been a wealth of information, the guy I knew I could count on to discuss this from a current and historical perspective. We were talking last half hour about the former Atlanta Watershed Commissioner, that would be Joanne Macrina, who is now serving a 4.5-year prison sentence for accepting bribes from a contractor in exchange for millions in city work for the contractor's company. She was, by the way, a Kasim Reed appointee back in 2011. Just wanted to clean that up. I wanted you to tell us a little bit about Al Wiggins, the current watershed commissioner, who apparently has his plate full, walking into just weeks ago a job that, is overwhelming right now.
The new guy, backgrounds as a cop and as an airman. He was he was an Air Force guy. Leadership style there is not necessarily one of really solid, really personal, deep communication. It's operations. Get a job done. So he flubbed it. He flubbed it. His communications chief flubbed it. Literally told me, I don't want to have to talk to people if I don't have anything to say.
Mm-hmm.
If I can't give you something new, I'm not going to send out an update. I'm like, that's not working.
No. When you have tens of thousands of people using empty milk jugs to pee in, I'm sorry, you need to provide an update, even if there's nothing new to report. Here's what we're working on. Here's what we expect. Yeah, to that end, I want to go back to the mayor situation. The Atlanta Community Press Collective reported about 12 hours ago that, in fact, there's a graphic that Mayor Andre Dickens was to appear at a fundraiser Friday night from 6 to 8 p.m. on his behalf, hosted by Memphis Mayor Paul Young. Tickets were going for anywhere from $250 to $1,800 that night in Memphis. In fact, real quick, let me double back on this reporting from Waikisha Howe, who ran for an Atlanta Public School Board seat back in 2021. She was on this story very early on her social media, which you can follow at Waikisha for APS. She tweets on June 1st, wait, so I'm taking water to my family, and Andre for Atlanta is out-of-town fundraiser while half of Atlanta is without water. Once I get here, the water drop-off for senior citizens is a mess. They're only allowed to get 1 16th-ounce bottle of water for seniors. Yeah, she was the first to point this out. The Atlanta Community Press Collective also following up on the story that the fundraiser was for Dickens himself. Tickets costed between $250 to $1,800. All checks payable to Andre for Atlanta. You can get that at Atlanta Community Press Collective's Twitter X platform. That is Atlanta_press. They did follow up and ask the mayor's office for some more information. Said that the mayor's office told ACPC Saturday that, quote, Mayor Dickens traveled on Friday for a previously scheduled trip at the invitation of Memphis Mayor Paul Young. There he met with business and community leaders from across the region to discuss issues of import to municipal leaders. ACPC inquired whether the trip was taxpayer funded but did not receive a response from the mayor's office. The mayor's office chief communication officer, Allison Fouché, served as chief communication officer for the city of Memphis under Mayor Paul Young. And Fouché directed ACPC to contact the Dickens campaign about campaign-related matters.
What the hell is he doing in Memphis?
Oh, yeah.
I'm sort of like, it's madness. I don't get it. I want to see who was at that fundraiser. Because that's I understand the impulse. The mayor is going to assumes he's going to need to raise probably $5 million. Probably $5 million for the campaign. I don't know how much he's got at the bank right now, but the idea that you're out of town while this is going on is problematic. I'm frustrated. I like the mayor. I really do. I'm not here trying to bash him, but the communication sucked, and it's troubling to me that he had to come back in order to sort that out.
Yeah,
that he couldn't leave that in Al Wiggins' hands. And I'm hoping that's an object lesson to Wiggins, and that this doesn't happen again. When there's another big main that blows, that from a communications perspective, that they're on top of it without having the mayor. The mayor has a reputation for being very hands-on, very upfront, very physically present, and that's great, but you've got to be able to delegate. And I want him to be able to delegate, and I want Wiggins to be somebody who can be delegated to. I hope Wiggins will talk to me about all of this after it's done. I want to get an after-action review out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be nice. Some forthrightness is obviously needed. And again, I understand they're busy. They've got some major water mains to deal with and get the delivery back on task. The cities may have even dodged a bullet in some regards because most college campuses aren't operating. Atlanta Public Schools is obviously out for the summer, so that's not so much an issue. Otherwise, there would be even greater headaches for folks who are dealing with their kids or going to class. And, I'm sure we're still dealing with some office closures today. The hotels and the revenue that they lost, the restaurant industry and their service, industry employees dealing with the ramifications of lost revenue, and will continue to do so heading into a busy summer season. You start to think about these things, and it just all starts to add up. I mean, I think you were trying over the weekend to guesstimate what the sort of economic impact is. It's got to be in the tens of millions of dollars just in the tax coffers for the city of Atlanta right now.
Yeah, I don't think it's tens of millions.
No?
In terms of taxes, I think it might be $500,000, straight sales taxes, maybe 600,000.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I say that is, so the city takes in $140 million, and that's all, $140 million in sales taxes in a year.
Okay.
So at 4%, that works out to $9.6 million a day in sales in the city. That's
okay. That's
sales taxable sales stuff.
Okay, that's where the math was going then.
Right.
Okay.
So, I think the city probably lost. I think the city probably lost $10 million in economic activity. That's not $10 million in tax revenue, but it's still $10 million. You lost a solid percent, I would say at this point, of economic activity, annually. Shave 1% off of whatever Atlanta's GDP is because of this. Not just because of what happened over the weekend, but because of the knock-on effects. Some of the spending got displaced into the city. People who would have gone to a restaurant on Clark Street or downtown ended up in Buckhead.
Yes, yeah, right.
Some of that the city captured anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it got displaced in time. Like, for example, the street festival that was supposed to be happening at Castleberry Hill.
Oh, yeah.
They've moved it to Juneteenth.
Yeah.
Like, so it's still going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But then the things that were going to happen at that time don't happen.
Yeah.
Because something else is happening.
Yeah.
So, like, there's an impact. It's hard to guess. Like, I want to know what the watershed department's estimates are and the city's finance department's estimates are for economic impact of watershed disruptions. Because once you know that, you can start making big economic arguments to voters and to the state, saying, look, here's what it costs. If we spend this money now, we make all of this money back because we don't have these disruptions. And this is why it's worth making this investment. You got to know those numbers. And right now, I don't know what those numbers are.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. All right, George Cheedy joining us from the Atlanta Objective. I want to thank you so much for your perspective. Again, historical and right up to the minute. I'll let you get to your trip to Charleston. You guys, you and your wife have a safe trip.
Happy to help you anytime.
Thank you. Appreciate it so much. Have a good one.
You bet. You too. Take care.
All right, so to do a little housekeeping here, as a matter of fact, as that call was ending, I was starting to hear my kitchen gurgle a bit, and lo and behold, I do have water now in Old Fourth Ward, and the pressure is probably as good as I can remember it being for the last few days, if not weeks. So that's a positive. Megan Thee Stallion was actually able to perform on Sunday. Her Friday and Saturday shows postponed. Don't know if those will be made up. I haven't really dived into that a whole lot. Didn't have tickets. Let's see. We understand that the downtown hospitals are trying to get back to normal. They've had tanker trucks delivering water to them in the interim. It's just been weird times. We still have boil advisories for a large portion of downtown and Old Fourth Ward and Summerhill, over into Grove Park, stretching down into the AUC Center, Castleberry Hill, basically all the way down to the city limits of East Point. And of course, I would normally advise you to follow Atlanta Watershed on social media. Their information outlay has gotten a lot better over the last few days, but it still leaves a lot to be desired. All right, when we come back, Colin Cowherd. Why am I airing Colin Cowherd? You'll hear poignant stuff when the Ron Show returns in just a few minutes. Our thanks again to George Cheedy for joining us from the Atlanta Objective. He's headed to Charleston to do some more reporting, for crying out loud. Goodness. I figured, the wife's traveling with him. In fact, he said the wife's driving. Good on her for helping out. And he was checking the tire pressure before they hit the road. That is collaboration. That is teamwork. Our best to George Cheedy and his wife for giving us some time on their journey this morning to discuss Atlanta's water history and how it's impacting us today. Obvious impacts. I wanted to pivot real quick because something that caught my attention Friday when all of this was going down, honestly, was a little bit of a diversion. I am a huge sports talk guy. I like listening to sports talk radio. I have a preference for 680 The Fan. Mostly because they're the Braves affiliate. They focus big time on the Braves, the Falcons. They do talk about the Hawks a good bit, less so Atlanta United. By the way, Atlanta United's an absolute mess. Expect to see their coach terminated here soon, I would think. They've lost 5 in a row at home. Fan base is unhappy. Anyway, Colin Cowherd is one of those national sports figures. And in a world of yelling at each other back and forth, the whole Skip Bayless thing, I can't handle that. That to me is it's churlish, it's childish, it's absolute garbage. It's like watching Jerry Springer or courtroom dramas. I can't do it. I just can't. Colin Cowherd, however, is a smart guy, and he just lays things out exactly as they are. Whether it makes you upset or hurts your feelings or you're a fan of a team and you don't like what he said about your team, in general, he says what is fact. And I don't know why I decided to dive into the Trump verdict, but he did. And damn it if he doesn't make a hellacious amount of sense. And if I'm the Biden campaign, I'm just running this on loop for the next 5 months. Take a listen to his summation.
Well, I have to talk about Trump. And I've said this for a long time. I've always considered myself sort of a left-leaning independent. I'm kind of a conservative on fiscal issues, more of a probably liberal. I don't know. I don't think pro-gay marriage is liberal. I don't think pro-pot is liberal. I think those are moderate stances today, but I was in, supportive of those 25 years ago. So I kind of consider myself a moderate, that if I am up in the air on something fiscally, I'd go conservative. Socially, I'd go left. But, I've said this about Trump before. He's trying to sell me an America that doesn't exist.
Thank you.
Like, I'm 60. I don't remember anything before like 6 or 7 years old. But for the last 53 years of my life, outside of the pandemic year, I've loved America. I've lived everywhere. Tampa, Vegas. I've been kind of poor, middle class. Now I'm better off than most. But he's trying to sell me this America stinks, and I just don't see it. I live in a nice neighborhood in LA. It's not a top 6 or 7 neighborhood in LA. It's not a Beverly Hills, a Malibu, a Brentwood, a Bel Air, Hancock Park. It's not like one of those swanky neighborhoods, but I don't see crime. I'm not stumbling over homeless people. I see happy people. Dodger Stadium's full. Leads Major League Baseball in attendance. Laker games are full. NFL games are full. They have money in their pocket. LAX is packed. I just saw a record airline revenue over the weekend. I'm constantly being sold in America by Donald Trump. Crime rates are skyrocketing. No, they're actually not. Starting in 2023, they have plummeted coast to coast, over 200 cities. Violent crime rates are down. I mean, Los Angeles and some cities may tick up in certain areas, but it's in America he's selling me. It would be like watching your football team and they play well and win, and your neighbor says they're playing terribly and keep losing. No, they're winning and they're not playing terribly. Like, you can't keep selling me on how bad the country I live in is, because it's not bad for me or my friends. I have a friend that's a stay-at-home dad. He's not rich. I have friends who work part-time, starting up businesses, who have worked at the same place forever. I have middle-class friends. They're not complaining about their life constantly, and I don't know what they are politically. I really don't. I don't talk about politics with my friends. I talk about my wife. I talk about sports. I talk about, we talk about guy stuff. So I'm not somebody that is, if you don't have policies that I connect with, and you're always grouching and bitching about the other side, I'm not really interested in you. Trump once tried to sell a vodka and acknowledges he never drank, ever. He's never really drank alcohol, but he tried to sell a vodka. So I've thought for a long time he's just kind of a con artist. But I was sitting there thinking this morning that if, let's say, I got busted for some really bad crime in court, a drug crime, and my wife did too, in a separate case. And then so did one of my kids, my manager, my agent, and my attorney. It would be reasonable to conclude that I'm shady and involved in a business that's not terribly legal. Well, Donald Trump is now a felon. His campaign chairman was a felon. So is his deputy campaign manager, his personal lawyer, his chief strategist, his national security advisor, his trade advisor, his foreign policy advisor, his campaign fixer, and his company CFO. They're all felons, judged by the company you keep.
Bingo.
It's a cabal of convicts. It's not that I'm not willing to vote for conservatives. I said I would have voted for Mitt Romney. Seemed like a decent family man. Now, he looks like he's the publisher of Yachting Weekly, so he's not terribly relatable as a big money guy. But I'm not somebody that I liked the second Bush, George Bush Sr.'s son. I liked him. I thought he was a decent American, a decent human. I guess he's got some artistic qualities now. He paints a lot. I liked his wife, Laura Bush. I thought they were decent people. I like the Obamas. I didn't understand the outrage. Good family, seemed like nice people. But I just if everybody in your social circle is a felon, I don't think it's rigged. I don't think the world's against you. And to get people to agree on anything, 34 counts, 0 for 34. I mean, that's a batting slump even the New York Mets could be impressed with. 0 for 34. So it's just when you're constantly trying to sell me on an America that I don't see. I'm not saying inflation's not an issue, but I get on airplanes all the time, and it's not a bunch of rich people. I don't fly private. I couldn't tell you the last time. I fly private maybe every couple of years. It'll be a family thing. We're trying to get everybody in the same flight, but not very often. I don't live in a fancy neighborhood. I get on planes. There's people in normal clothes. They don't look rich to me. And the planes are all full. And the hotels are all full. And the freeways are all full. That means people are going to work. You're trying to sell me on this story and this narrative that's just not true. Well, Colin, you're out of touch. Out of touch to what? I have single people that live next to me, young families that live next to me. People aren't grousing. They're not miserable all day. Now, they're not talking politics, but, Trump's entire game plan is the country is in a free fall. Maybe in the Trump-centric neighborhoods it is. Mm-hmm. It's not anywhere for my sister, who lives rurally, doesn't have a lot of crime in her neighborhood. I don't. My friends don't. We live all over Los Angeles, in one of those big, scary cities that voted for liberals. Ooh, scary. I don't know. Everybody was saying hung jury. I didn't know. But when everybody in your team, everybody in your group, your cabal is a felon, maybe the world's not against you. Mm-hmm. I mean, it is New York City. It is New York City. I get it. They're going to appeal. Maybe it'll drive up his fundraising.
Of course.
But stop trying to sell me on everything's rigged. The country's falling into the sea. The economy's terrible. The economy's okay. It's not like on fire, but get on a plane, find all the empty seats. I don't see them. Those aren't cheap. Either hotel rooms over Memorial Weekend. I like living in Portland. I like growing up on the coast of Washington. I like living in LA. I have a place in Chicago. I love it. I have really good friends and go regularly to Rhode Island. I love that. Maybe some of you are just unhappy. Maybe you're only happy when you're unhappy.
Yep.
But the America that I live in is imperfect. But compared to the rest of the world, I think we're doing okay. And if you're not, is it possible? Just possible. I'm not even saying probable. Is it possible if your life has just been miserable for the last 4 years? It's not exclusively the fault of somebody in 1600 North Pennsylvania Avenue. Maybe it's not all their fault.
You know why Colin Cowherd's really smart? Because he doesn't talk politics all that much. He makes a lot of money talking sports. And he probably pissed off a ton of MAGAs by wading into this on Friday on his YouTube and podcast. I'm sure he's facing some backlash. But he's not facing backlash because of anything he said that was unfactual. That's the thing I love about Colin Cowherd. Again, he may rail on your favorite player or your favorite team. He may tell you your favorite team is a dumpster fire, that they need to fire the coach or trade that favorite player. It doesn't matter. He comes with facts. He comes with data. He comes with statistics. And damn if he didn't bring that brand to politics in this one realm. Honestly, the political discourse in this country needs voices like Colin Cowherd who speak from a rational point of view instead of from a hyperventilating, hyper-partisan, emotional tantrum throwing like Judge Jeanine Pirro was last Thursday, for crying out loud, or Jesse Waters or Sean Hannity with that shrill, always, like it's always red alert with Sean Hannity. The world could use more Skip Bayless talking politics if I had my way. Anyway, you got me anyway. Does that work? Anyway, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks again to George Cheedy for joining us to discuss the Atlanta water crisis, now in day 4. Show notes, we'll have them for you at ronshowatl.com. This show will re-air 5 to 6 p.m. on America One Radio, on demand all day at progressivevoices.com and via podcast. Back tomorrow because I thought I was going to take the week off, and at least I'm going to do one more show before I go camping for 3 days. Thank you for listening. Appreciate it. Have a good one.